Onstage, Onstage with Jim and Tom. 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 Tom and Jim.
Tonight we welcome Bad Thoughts to the stage of the Phoenix Theater. This is a band that by their own admission plays salty and sad jams for your general enjoyment or perhaps your displeasure. Everyone in this band is an essential member of the Sonoma County indie music scene, and we're thrilled to have them here tonight. Please welcome to the program Derek, Chloe, James, and Hez, the band known as Bad Thoughts.
Bad Thoughts.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Glad to be here.
So this is an episode of Onstage with Jim and Tom.
That's true.
We're
That
all
is.
in agreement. This is an episode.
That is a fact.
Yeah, this is
We're
a
all
fact.
here.
And so Bad Thoughts, unsurprisingly, has songs that, reflect bad thoughts. And so I think this episode is gonna have some light stuff and then gonna have some heavy stuff.
Yeah,
I
sure.
say we start out light.
Yeah, go for it.
I just had a question. Maybe it's a cut prompt. Maybe it's good. This is a group, so we start with the light. This is a group of people that seem very into pop culture.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah,
I
sure.
enjoy it.
Yeah, we like the
100%.
comic books
To an extent,
We
yeah.
like the films. We like the music.
Yes.
These
These are all
in a
true
bad way.
things.
In a good
We
way.
like take it all in,
So
Yeah, totally.
my question, which could get cut, does anybody at the table have a superhero that they especially identify with the most?
This is very good.
Two people at this table that could answer that very well, and I don't know if I'm one of them.
Yeah, that's all right. And maybe you will hear them say things, and then you will think of something.
When I was in high school, I think I really identified very strongly with Bruce Banner and the Hulk, just because I was a very angry youth, and I really liked the idea of that anger giving me a certain amount of power over the dark forces in my life. But as I got older, I think Spider-Man's my guy. He's just trying as hard as he can to do the right thing all the time, and he can't always do it because he's just one dude that can throw webs places.
One of the reasons I like Spider-Man also is because he doesn't just stop crime, but he helps out his community.
Yeah.
He's Queens is his place.
He's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
He's the
yeah.
friendly neighborhood.
He's not just all
Spider-Man.
about saving the world. He's about helping the little guy and just trying to make people's days better.
Mm-hmm. And he actively plays a role in that. He doesn't just sit there waiting for things to happen to him. He actively goes and finds ways to help people, which I always thought was cool.
And if there's nobody that needs help, then he'll go out and rob his own bank and create that.
I'm
But it's usually the chameleon.
That's part of the lore,
That's
though.
usually the chameleon in disguise as Spider-Man trying
Yeah.
to frame him.
See, you got fooled. You got fooled.
The chameleon got you.
I thought that was wow, man.
I know. Look at that. His anti-Spider-Man propaganda has been.
Wow.
You got to stop listening to Jay Jonah. I'm sorry. He spins nothing but lies.
Does this band? Well, do either of you have any superhero thoughts?
I mean, I was going to say Spider-Man too. That's crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I went dark with mine.
Yeah, see, because I feel like you and I are a little more on the dark side, Hez and me, and the three of you are kind of like, you're like the good neighborhood helpers. What's your dark one?
Okay, so this is not canon if you're thinking about superheroes, but it's Rainn Wilson in the movie Super. He plays the Crimson Bolt, and he's a devout religious man whose life falls apart. His wife becomes a drug addict and is pulled into this awful scene, and he has these visions, and he feels like he's being called upon by a god who's this weird tentacle monster that goes inside his brain, and he's misguided, and he's angry, and I think that it's so easy to take your vigor and your vitriol and push it out there, especially when you're blinded by this higher being telling you to do things. And in the movie, you see him realizing what he's doing. At first, he's very I'm the Crimson Bolt. Shut up, crime. It's hilarious. But then when he starts to actually hurt people, he's kind of realizing how devastating it is in the moment, even though he's going through with it. And I feel like I probably relate more to that. Like, if I went that far, I would probably regret it because I'm not like I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm like a bad person deep down, but like I got my shit, you know.
Would you say he's a hero or an anti-hero?
I think he's more like an anti-hero, but he has his heart in the right place. He's just misguided.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so
Just for context,
like
too,
I said, it's not canon.
No, that's fine.
canon.
Doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be. Anybody who has a problem with you being off canon can turn this episode off right now. Do you feel like some of that bled into this album that we're going to talk about tonight? Some of what you saw in that character, or not at all? Because it seemed like you identified deeply with that character, and like
to a point, I'd say the being like religiously brainwashed as a teenager and in my entire childhood. I definitely I felt like if I hadn't have broken free from that, then like that could have been my future as this sad man, like looking in the mirror and crying, and it's like, people look stupid when they cry, you know, like no friends and just sad, and like constantly guilty, like because that's how it was for me for so long. I think that's why I related to him so much. But I mean, I don't know about. I mean, there's like bits of like religious imagery that pop up in one of the songs, and I guess that would be connected in some way.
The album is called "All My Past Lives Ended Poorly," and you, I believe, wrote
4 out of the 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So this album like really documents a period for you.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like you really feel like you were going down a path if you hadn't taken a hard turn, that your life would have been defined by a faith that you didn't choose.
Well, I feel like it was inevitable for me because I always felt like something was off.
Because you grew up where?
Oh, I grew up here in Sonoma County. I've like pretty much Santa Rosa, born and raised. I've only lived.
You spent time somewhere else for a period.
I lived in the Midwest for 2 years.
Okay.
That was kind of an ill-advised trip, trying to get away from the control of like my parents and feeling like I had to like break free again, not just from like their religious, you know, background and everything, but from the way they wanted me to be.
Okay.
It was ill-advised, but you know, it kind of had to happen at some point.
All right, let's shift into the darkness then.
Here we go.
So tell us about that. Like you were not the going to the Midwest, but just the decision. I mean, like when did you decide, all right, this is not my life. I don't want to do that.
It took years. I think all throughout my teen years, I knew that something was off. Everyone's like, isn't this so great? And you just feel the love. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And you just go along with it because it's harder to say no, because then there's something wrong with you. And I'm like, and I felt inside, I was like, well, there's something wrong with me because like I don't feel this shit they're talking about. And I'd go to like all these crazy events. They did something at like I was on the news because I went to an event at it's AT&T Park. I don't know if it's changed now, but it was like this gigantic Christian concert, and there's these huge crosses up on like the baseball field and everything, and it was like Cutlass and POD and all these fucking bands. And I went.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we remember.
I was probably
this.
there.
Yeah. You might have been there. But I remember I was.
Southside.
I feel so alive.
Great tune.
I feel I could fly.
Fly. I can't deny it. I feel so alive. Anyway.
So I was on the news because they were like, "What's so great about this event?" And I was just like, "It's awesome! Like bringing all these kids, like they have things that they love, like this music, and it can kind of reach a bigger message." And there was a big like anti-sex thing going on as well. They were like, you know, stay virgins because it's better, and they scare you with all these fucking pictures of, you know, syphilis. Yeah,
Essentially, yeah.
yeah. And I remember
scary.
At a certain point, I think it was like at the end of each night, they would do this huge hurrah, and everybody like, come up to the front of the stage and you can get saved. Like maybe you've been saved before, but it's still okay. You can come up. And I came up with my friends, and like I'm sitting next to them, like kneeling, and they're all just bawling, and I feel nothing. And I was like, there's something off here. There's a reason why I don't feel this, because I should feel this. This is the exact moment I would feel this. And so that happened all throughout my teens. And then my parents left like organized churches and went to like kind of like homeschool families that had home churches. And really what was the clincher was one of the families, they got divorced. And instead of taking in the mother and the children and being like, it's going to be okay, we'll take care of you, they expelled her from the group. And that was it. I was done.
You saw that, and that was a defining moment.
Yeah, that was like, no, there's no going back now. I'll never feel the same about any of you people.
And yet you still, this is a personal thing, but you still married early.
I did, yeah. And I stayed a virgin until I met my wife, and it was I don't know, it was still very ingrained in me, and I think a lot of it, and the reason why I stayed in a relationship that was just started off on a bad foot and just continued because of the trouble that it was causing in my life. And I stayed in it for so long because I felt and I saw from relationships in other Christian households, it was like, it's bad, but you can't get divorced. You just stick with it. I didn't have a reference of a happy, healthy relationship forever. And so I just thought, well, I guess this is it. And I was just like, I'll bite my lip and I'll go through it. It's fine. And for so long, and it wasn't until a couple years ago that I actually saw like healthy relationships, and I saw that I could be happy.
You married at what age?
I was 23.
23, and that we'll talk about that because this album was written sometime after that period, right?
Oh yeah, this was all written, I'd say, except for one song, the song Kansas, which is about living in the Midwest. I started writing right after I moved back, but it was just bits and pieces, and it came together like 2 years ago. Because
this album, the 4/5 of it that you wrote, is it really highlights, I think, a lot of the darkness and the dark stuff that you've experienced and you channeled into this album. But just a note on finding a relationship that works. You once wrote something about Chloe, who you are in a relationship with. Spoiler alert for everyone. You once wrote something online that has always stuck with me. And it was so sweet that I wanted to look it up so I could get the words right. And I'm just nice. This is a full circle thing because you just said you'd never thought that basically you could be happy.
Yeah, I didn't know I could be happy. It seemed like an impossibility.
You wrote of this woman right here. Just over a year ago, I did not believe that I could truly love or be loved to the extent that I have been shown since then. I can't ever let it be taken for granted, so I'll speak of it often and tell her that I love her every day more than I did the day before.
That's so nice. I look at that post every now and then. It's just very nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's a wonderful post because
it's nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
Here's the deal. It makes it so easy because he can wake up in the morning and go, Chloe, the post.
Check it out. I DM'd you.
I refer you to my previous post.
Look, I know you're mad about what I said last night, but and then you just email her the link.
Just screenshot it so you have it always.
Jokes aside, though, I think that is a really important moment, being able to write that post, because you spent a lot of your life thinking that you would not have that type of happiness.
Oh, yeah.
To that end, an EP was released by this band recently called...
That's so well, because that's when I met you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What year was that?
Oh, fuck. I mean...
It's 15.
2015, yeah.
Well, because then a year later, you would have your own version of that, Derek. I mean, you came on this show in January of 2016, and you can share what you want or not share what you don't want, but you later told me that it was like the beginning of the darkest period of your life.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like... It was kind of in the middle of it. Basically, I've talked to a lot of people, like professionals, about this. About a month before, or about 2 months before that, I was hit with what I guess you would call depression. But I mean, to the extent where I had to seek help, professional help for it.
Yeah, it was debilitating.
Yeah.
But what it came, like the trigger point, and we've all had them, was you as well exited a relationship. Everything.
I hadn't exited the relationship at this point.
You hadn't yet?
No.
Well, basically, you had been living a life that seemed fine, but like kind of had been duct taping stuff.
Oh, 100%.
And everything, as you described it to me, just kind of fell apart. Like the life that you thought you were to live was not the life you were to live. And so in that way, there's overlap there.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of... I definitely, like you said, I was duct taping everything together and not really like fixing anything or looking behind the curtains. I was basically sweeping all the dirt under the rug, metaphorically, as you might say, for a good portion of my life. And then, I guess a better analogy would be shoving all your stuff in the closet and then trying to jam the door shut. eventually
The room looks really clean.
The room looks great.
Yeah.
It was a great looking room.
Just don't go in the closet.
For like 30 years. It was a great looking room. And then, boom.
Yeah, and not only are you putting stuff in the closet, you're also putting in all the drawers. So it's like the drawers, which should be organized, they're just filled with all sorts of shit.
Oh, they're filled with
It
so
doesn't
much
belong
shit.
at all. Everything is a mess behind
Yeah,
the
and then
scenes.
it all gets tangled. It's like Christmas lights. It's like you can't just pull one out now. It's like and then since you have to pull them all out, you're never going to pull any of them out. So yeah.
I mean, the album title, the EP, is called "All My Past Lives Ended Poorly," and we'll be talking about that album tonight. And I just feel like most of the people at this table have had like a transformative, like rerouting of their life in the last 5 to 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Oh, definitely.
And I think what people who haven't experienced extreme depression or haven't had that sort of a reroute, because there are some people that go through life, you met some of them at that concert, they go through life thinking everything's normal, they're normal, everybody who doesn't have their experience is not normal, and they live to be 100 years and then they die. Never once do they think, I'm going to change things.
I envy them.
But yeah, it's funny because it was like I was seeing a different therapist up until I had that episode you were talking about where basically I lost my mind.
Well, you had 2 episodes.
Yeah.
You had that episode and then you were on an episode of Onstage with Jim and Tom.
Oh, yeah.
You were doing quite well, by the way. If you go back and watch the tape, which the episode's online, you really can't tell that
Really?
you're
'Cause
in
I
a
looked-
state of extreme despair.
Oh my God, I looked insane.
Do you feel like that?
I see that man
Yeah.
on stage 3 years ago, and I look into his eyes, and I'm just like,
Well, he's a
God,
desperate man.
The terror in his eyes.
Yeah.
Like,
Here's a big one for you, Derek.
lay it on me.
Lay it on. And feel free to punch back if you want. But what does Derek 2019 know that Derek 2016 did not know?
God, it's not really a matter of knowing, it's being okay not knowing. I think that's a thing. Is Derek 2016 had to have certainty? Derek in 2016 had to know that everything will be all right. And Derek in 2019 is okay with the future being uncertain. So, I mean, I guess to answer your question, not knowing is what I know. Being okay not knowing is what, yeah.
It's a nice vague answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. well done. I mean, I don't think you're lying. I just think that,
I mean, at this point, I'm so open to what's happening in the future that in the past I had to know where I was going. I was like, this is going to be my band. This is going to be my career. And like, this is going to be my life. Like, this is going to be my girlfriend. This is going to be my family. Like I had to know all these things. And now I'm just like, well, the more you get attached to these ideas of what these things should be, the more you think it's fucked up the more you think you fucked up when you don't live up to that standard.
I think that's a very good point. And let's just jump into one of the songs, the one that you wrote, which is Imaginary Friends. This song, Imaginary Friends, is basically the documenting of your own personal rebirth.
A little bit. It's kind of, it's not really the rebirth, more like the death of my old self, I would say. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't quite gotten to the point. Well, I'm now getting to the point, maybe on the new Bad Thoughts record that we're writing right now, there'll be more about my rebirth. But at this point, I was still writing about the death of my old self.
I could be wrong, and I know this is deeply personal, but it feels like what you both went through, Hez and Derek, was you were both like building a life with someone that ultimately you didn't end up with. And you hadn't been alone with your own thoughts for a long time. And then you got out of that life, and then it was like, holy shit, what is going on here?
Yeah,
and then it was
definitely.
just like examining all this stuff about yourself that maybe you hadn't since you were a teenager. I mean, you were with your person for 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an attack on her at all. This is all about you.
No, definitely not.
You had a relationship, it didn't work out, and then when you got to be alone, it was like, God damn.
Well, it's basically like I started dating her in like my mid to mid 20s. And I mean, at this point, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was a white, straight, privileged male. Like, I didn't have really any reason to develop a moral compass or an emotional compass, like any kind, of anything, because the outside world was just so nice to me. So when I started dating her, she kind of became my moral and emotional compass. And I kind of just relied on her to, make all the hard decisions about what it means to develop your own morality and stuff. And then, so unfortunately, that doesn't leave you much of a emotionally fulfilled person, like after years of that. So I guess, yeah, Like when I got out of the relationship, I had to learn all that stuff for myself. So that's what that song's about.
Yeah, a lot of looking in the mirror and not liking what you're seeing.
Oh God, so much of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that kind of mirrors your experience, or was yours more of a like lifelong rebuilding that you had to do?
It was a complete reboot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to
Hard
start.
reboot.
Yeah, I had to shut the thing down and turn it back on.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams did.
Yeah.
Pop culture, baby. Pop culture. The band
It's
loves pop
everywhere.
culture. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's I feel like I was trying so hard to make it work, and eventually it just became clear this could never work. And I have to do this thing, and it's terrifying because it's this whole new thing. I've never been in this place before, and it felt like being a child again, and completely starting over and having to learn how to take care of myself, because there was a lot of things I was kind of sheltered from, being with someone else that kind of helped you through things. So yeah, it was a complete reboot.
There is a song on this album called Past Lives. Talks a lot about, I think, the things we're talking about here tonight.
Indeed.
Is there anything more to add about that song and what you put into that song than what we haven't, that we haven't already talked about?
I think it was basically like having gone to that point, and there's like expectations someone might put in you when you're in relationships of any kind. And I think at that time I felt like I didn't have anything to give, that I was like broken. And I was like, I can barely stand. I'm not going to hold you up. And it's also just about, like, I made this mess. I have to sleep in it. Like, you make your own bed. Like, you're an adult now. You have to take care of yourself. You can't rely on other people as much. So
this I can edit out, but I'm really curious about it just personally. Where you're at now, when you look back at, what your parents tried to do, do you like appreciate the good and like accept the bad, or do you feel like you struggle with that still?
I still struggle with it. I think there was I think it was the same as my anti-hero. Good intentions, but completely misguided and blinded by a higher power. And I think it was it's hard to look back on it and pick apart everything and like pick the pieces that I thought was good, because there was so much that I felt was wrong. I think I'm learning to like move past it and just love them for who they were at the best times, because I'd hope that's what people would think of me.
So people just have different priorities. People just have different ideas as to like what is the end all be all most important thing. And if like religion and faith is your end all be all, you're going to make a lot of decisions surrounding that.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
if you as their child, that's not your end all be all, well, like I don't have to tell you, that's going to cause a lot of disagreement and a lot of pain.
Yeah, it's a cascading like barrage of choices and things. I think that my parents, they had a really hard time growing up, and their parents thought they were doing the best thing, and it really fucked them up. And then they thought they were doing the best thing, and it fucked me up in some ways. And I think it also like there's parts of the way that I grew up, it made me more of a gentleman to people. I don't know. I think I didn't go to public school. I was homeschooled like my whole life, and I think that caused me to be very shy, and like I just kind of blossomed in the last like 10 years. I barely spoke until I was in my late teens.
Barely spoke.
Mm-hmm. I was like terrified of people.
Really?
Yeah.
So somebody might look at you and not know that. They might think this is just a quiet guy, or maybe an angry guy or whatever, but you were terrified of people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just like horrified.
Where do you think that came from?
Fear of the unknown, and also like my dad was very stern, and anytime I came to him with anything, it was a complete shutdown. It was like his agenda, so I felt like I couldn't like communicate. It was always a wall there, and I had to get past that. And I think when I started to meet people that wanted to know what I had to say, that's when I opened up.
Some philosophers said until It was a really good quote. It said, "Until you realize that you need to die in order to grow, you will be a troubled guest on a dark earth." And I forgot who said that, but I always thought that had weight to it. But it was just like basically it goes on to what we were saying of just like sometimes in order to grow into your next phase, you need to let a part of you die.
Before we wrap on the album, because I think this is like a really good conclusive note that we're on here, do you have anything to add about the entirety of the album, or like about where you are now compared to where you were in this album?
Well, I guess I don't know. I've grown a lot, and like I feel like there are like before felt like a different life and felt so long ago, but actually the name of the album was basically about our cat that we had for a while. His name was Dusty, and he was very old, and we gave him like this life. We gave him the best end life that we could give him, and we figured that was the best way to like honor his all my past lives ended poorly, but we had a really good end of life for him. And I feel like even though all these other things like didn't go so well, I'm really looking forward to what I got going on right now. So I'm at my best place I've ever been, and I really appreciate all the things I've been given and the opportunities I've been given. It's really great to be here, to be able to do this, and I'm really appreciative, and I'm stoked to write more music and dredge out more darkness to try and find some light in it.
So
Anybody else have anything to add about this project before we close? It's Bad Thoughts. It's January 2019.
I just I don't know. I never really grew up having many friends that stuck around for too long. And this is by far my favorite place I've lived because of all the people I've met. And I've been in bands pretty much as long as I've lived here. And this is finally a band where I could say I actually have best friends now. And that hasn't really been a common theme in my life. I've never I've always felt like that was a really heavy word to use because I never really had it. But I feel like I do now, and it's really nice. We're all just best buds.
Cool.
I'm gonna cry.
Oh, don't cry. I feel very similar. Anytime I had a really good friend, something would happen, and they would be expelled from my life beyond my control. And so it was really hard for me to connect with people, and it took making music with my brother and then expanding outside of that. And he originally was the bassist for Bad Thoughts. I'd only ever played in bands with my brother. This is the first time I played without a family member in it. Wow. But these guys have become my family. Cool.
That goes right into my outro here.
There we go.
Before Tom Gaffey has a closing thought, if he has any.
You know what?
You can just say I don't. Say I don't have a closing thought.
A closing thought.
That's great.
You know what? Closing question. Hezekiah.
Yes.
You came from a very religious background.
I did.
You finally left it,
Mm-hmm.
which was a move that must have been a little bit of a shock to the family.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And are you still a part of the family?
Oh, yes. I love my family. I think after many things that happened, transpired, and kind of showed them that pushing so hard for a certain thing was tearing us all apart, we're actually closer now than we've ever been.
Yeah, that was, I think, part of the reason you stayed in the religious side of your family was because you were afraid you were going to lose them.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But you did not.
No, yeah. It took me showing that I was my own person outside of that they wanted me to be with them, I wasn't pushing against them anymore,
Cool.
Yeah.
Did the passing of your father have anything to do with that?
Oh yeah, it definitely did. There's a lot of hurt and unanswered questions and feelings, but we can be together, and I think this is the closest we've ever been. And we make sure that we see each other every week, and we get together and we have dinner, and we make plans to be together. And our family's growing. Like my little brother just had a baby, and so it's crazy.
I'm glad you brought up the family prompt. Because I just want to say that I appreciate you all, and I'm happy that you're all here. If our music scene is like a chosen family, I feel like you guys are like my favorite cousins.
No.
Like I don't see you all the time.
I have favorite cousins. I understand.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Totally.
Yeah, not quite brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
but first cousins that I so dearly
I'll
love.
take it.
They're great.
So, thrilled to see you, thrilled to be related to you. Your
thank you.
performance is great, and everyone else will realize that when they don't turn the episode off and keep listening, because in just a moment, a performance by the band known as Bad Thoughts is next. Thanks again for coming, everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Jim and Tom.
You are an artist, giving up on art. Your personality, made up of a farce. It's not complicated. Why everyone will leave you be. Don't be disappointed. You'll always have me. Let's make a baby, then throw it in the trash. Teen is getting hazy. You know this couldn't last. Talk about the future when all I wanna do is fade away. Let me your dramatics, girl. I don't need any difference anyways. Let's be enemies. Wanna be enemies. Burn the bridges and hold out both your hands. Walk into your dad's house, torches in their hands. Excuse me, I'm just saying, now would be the time to get away. 2 steps back or else you'll see it's settle this in the old-fashioned way. Let's be enemies. Wanna be enemies. You are an artist. Yeah, you. Lipstick, I'm such a cross your teeth.
just can't be alone. Let's go and tell lies, feel wide. I don't wanna be alone. These things make no song in my voice here. He just wants to be alone. The thoughts making out wrong. He gets me high. I just wanna be alone. Be alone. Holding up the pieces, raging my ego, so I can see the disappointing faces. Holding on to sadness, my own discretion, held it like a cross while you put the nails in. You talk about your past.